There are moments in life that crystallize everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. For me, that moment came watching my brother Marcus and our father William march into my PhD graduation celebration like they owned the place. A celebration for earning my doctorate in biomedical engineering from Stanford at 28, after years of research that had just landed me a position at one of the most prestigious pharmaceutical companies in California. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, celebrating the culmination of a decade of academic excellence, and all they could see were dollar signs. The same predatory gleam I'd witnessed 9 years earlier when they systematically destroyed my financial security and left me to rebuild from nothing. Growing up in Phoenix, our family appeared successful from the outside. Dad owned a chain of auto dealerships across Arizona. Mom worked as a real estate agent for luxury properties. And we lived in a sprawling house in Scottsdale with a pool, 3-car garage, and manicured lawn that required constant irrigation in the desert heat. Marcus, 4 years my senior, was the golden child from birth. Star quarterback in high school, business major at Arizona State, and Dad's chosen successor for the dealership empire. He had that effortless charisma that made people want to be around him, combined with a ruthless streak that emerged whenever he wanted something. I was different. Quiet, studious, more interested in taking apart electronics than throwing footballs. While Marcus charmed teachers and coaches, I spent hours in the garage building robots and conducting chemistry experiments that occasionally resulted in small explosions and frantic calls to the fire department. My parents tolerated my academic interests as a harmless quirk, assuming I'd eventually outgrow my nerd phase and join the family business. They funded science camps and math tutoring with the same resigned patience they might show for an expensive hobby, never recognizing the passion and talent that drove my pursuits. The first cracks in our family foundation appeared when I was 15. Marcus had dropped out of ASU halfway through his junior year to start a series of failed business ventures. Each failure was met with renewed financial support from Dad and elaborate explanations about market timing and bad luck. Meanwhile, my requests for advanced science equipment or specialized computer software were met with lectures about fiscal responsibility. Marcus is establishing himself in the business world, Dad would explain when I questioned the disparity. Your education is already covered. That's your investment. That education coverage he referenced was a trust fund my maternal grandmother had established before her death. Grandma Rose had been a mathematics professor at the University of Arizona, the only family member who truly understood my academic aspirations. She'd left specific instructions that the money was to be used exclusively for my higher education, including undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral studies. The trust was substantial, nearly $400,000 by my 18th birthday, enough to cover tuition, living expenses, and research costs for the extended education I'd need to achieve my goals in biomedical engineering. It represented not just financial security, but validation from someone who believed in my potential. Marcus resented that trust fund with an intensity that poisoned family gatherings. He'd make snide comments about favoritism, about Grandma's obvious bias toward the academic grandchild. Never mind that Grandma had also left him money. He'd blown through his inheritance within 6 months of her death on a sports car and a failed restaurant venture. By my senior year of high school, I'd been accepted to Stanford with a partial scholarship. The trust fund would cover the remaining costs comfortably, allowing me to focus on studies rather than working multiple jobs. I was excited about the future, naive enough to believe my family shared my enthusiasm. That naivety shattered on a Tuesday evening in March, 3 weeks before my 19th birthday. I'd driven home from my part-time job at a local lab where I was gaining hands-on experience with biomedical equipment. The house felt different when I walked in. There was a tension in the air, the kind that precedes family meetings about serious topics. Mom and Dad were in the living room with Marcus and his girlfriend Jessica, a bleached blonde influencer whose main qualification seemed to be her Instagram following. Spreadsheets and legal documents covered the coffee table, and everyone looked up with expressions ranging from guilt to defiance when I entered. Perfect timing, Marcus said with false cheerfulness. We need to discuss something important with you. I sat in the armchair across from them, immediately noticing that my trust fund statements were among the papers on the table. A cold dread began forming in my stomach. Your brother has an incredible business opportunity, Dad began, his voice taking on the same tone he used when selling cars to reluctant customers. A chance to franchise a fitness concept that's exploding in California. But he needs capital to make it happen. Okay, I said cautiously. What does that have to do with me? Marcus leaned forward, his salesman smile in full effect. The thing is, little brother, this opportunity won't wait. I need to move on it now, or someone else will snatch up the territory rights. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, I replied, though the dread in my stomach was intensifying. Mom finally spoke up, her voice carefully modulated. Honey, We've been reviewing your educational finances, the trust fund your grandmother left. It's more than you actually need for college. What? The word came out sharper than I intended. Dad produced a calculator and began rattling off figures. Even at Stanford, with living expenses, your total costs will be maybe $200,000 over 4 years. But the trust has $400,000. That's $200,000 just sitting there, earning minimal interest. It's not just for undergraduate, I protested, my voice rising. Grandma specifically set it aside for all my education, bachelor's, master's, PhD. She wanted me to be able to pursue research without financial stress. Research doesn't pay the bills, Marcus interjected dismissively. You'll be in school for what, another 8 years? Meanwhile, this fitness franchise opportunity could set our whole family up for life. Jessica nodded enthusiastically, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against her phone screen as she showed us photos of luxury cars and designer handbags. Marcus is going to build an empire, she gushed. This is just the beginning. I turned to my parents, hoping for sanity. You can't be serious about this. That money is specifically designated for my education. Grandma made her intentions very clear. Your grandmother isn't here to see how the world has changed, Dad replied coldly. Business opportunities like this don't come along every day. Your brother could triple that investment within 2 years. And if he doesn't, I asked, what if it fails like all his other ventures? The room went silent. Marcus's face darkened, his charming facade slipping. All my other ventures? He repeated dangerously. The restaurant that closed in 6 months, I enumerated, my academic precision kicking in even as my emotional world crumbled. The online retail business that never shipped a single product. The cryptocurrency trading company that lost half its initial investment in 3 weeks. Those were learning experiences, Dad said firmly. Marcus has gained valuable expertise from each venture. This fitness franchise is different. It has a proven business model and corporate support. Then get a business loan, I suggested. If it's such a sure thing, banks will be happy to invest. Business loans require collateral and have high interest rates, Marcus explained patronizingly. Using your trust fund is smarter financially. We can pay you back with interest once the business is profitable. And if it's not profitable, it will be, he insisted. But even if there are setbacks, you have scholarships. You're smart. You'll figure out how to make college work without relying on family money. The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Family money? It's my money. Grandma left it specifically for my education. Grandma left it for the family, Mom corrected gently. She wanted us all to succeed. Supporting Marcus's business venture is supporting the family. I stared at them in disbelief. You're talking about stealing my inheritance. Don't be dramatic, Dad snapped. We're talking about a temporary loan that will benefit everyone. Your education will still get funded, just through different means. What different means? I demanded. Student loans, work-study programs, maybe a gap year to save money, Mom suggested. Plenty of students manage without trust funds. The betrayal was so complete, so casual, that I struggled to process it. These people who claimed to love me were discussing dismantling my future with the same tone they might use to plan a vacation. I won't agree to this, I said firmly. The trust fund stays intact for my education, exactly as Grandma intended. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Little brother, you don't have a choice. Dad and I are co-trustees of that fund. Legally, we can authorize the withdrawal. What? I grabbed the trust documents from the table, scanning through legal language I'd never bothered to read carefully before. There it was, a provision allowing the trustees to modify distributions if they deemed it in the beneficiary's best interest. You can't use a technicality to steal from me, I protested. We're not stealing, Dad said with practiced calm. We're making a smart financial decision for the entire family's benefit. This is exactly what Grandma was trying to prevent, I said desperately. She knew you'd try to divert the money if you could. Your grandmother was a wonderful woman, but she didn't understand business, Dad replied dismissively. She was an academic who never had to make real-world financial decisions. The disrespect toward Grandma's memory was the final straw. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. If you do this, if you take my money for Marcus's latest get-rich-quick scheme, I will never forgive you. Don't threaten us, Mom warned. We're doing what's best for this family. You're doing what's best for Marcus, I corrected. You always have. Your brother works hard, Dad said. He deserves our support. And I don't. The silence that followed was answer enough. Fine, I said quietly. Take the money, but understand what you're choosing. You're choosing Marcus's business fantasies over my educational future. You're choosing to betray Grandma's trust and destroy mine. And when this latest venture fails, and it will fail, don't come looking to me for help or forgiveness. I walked toward the stairs, planning to lock myself in my room until I could figure out my next move. But Marcus's voice stopped me. Don't be so dramatic, little brother. This is going to work out great for everyone. You'll see. I turned back to face him. No, Marcus, I won't see, because I won't be here to watch it happen. That night, I researched my legal options. The trust document was ironclad. Dad and Marcus could indeed authorize the withdrawal, despite Grandma's clear intentions. My only recourse would be expensive litigation that I couldn't afford, against family members who controlled the very funds I'd need for legal fees. By morning, I'd made my decision. I drove to Stanford's financial aid office and explained my situation to Dr. Patricia Martinez, the director of graduate student funding. She listened with growing concern as I detailed my family's plan to divert my educational trust fund. "This is unfortunately more common than you might think," she said sadly. "Family financial dynamics can be incredibly destructive. Let me see what options we can explore." Over the next 3 hours, Dr. Martinez helped me navigate emergency financial aid applications, research scholarships, and explore work-study opportunities. It wouldn't be easy. I'd need to take out substantial student loans and work throughout college, but it was possible. The most important thing, she emphasized, is protecting yourself from further financial sabotage. "Do you have your own bank account?" I did, with about $3,000 saved from my part-time job. That evening, I transferred the money to a new account at a different bank, one my family couldn't access or monitor. The confrontation came 2 days later when Dad and Marcus attempted to withdraw $200,000 from the trust fund, only to discover I'd submitted paperwork challenging the transaction. The legal hold I'd managed to place would last only 30 days, but it bought me time to implement my escape plan. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Marcus stormed into my room without knocking, waving bank documents. "Protecting my inheritance," I replied calmly, continuing to pack boxes. "You're sabotaging the family," Dad accused, appearing behind Marcus. "This fitness franchise won't wait for your childish games." "Then find another investor," I suggested. "One who actually wants to give you money." "We're trying to help you," Mom insisted, joining the crowd in my doorway. "Teaching you about sacrifice and family loyalty." "You're teaching me about betrayal and theft," I corrected. "But don't worry, I'm a quick learner." "Where do you think you're going to go?" Marcus demanded. "You can't afford college without that trust fund." "Watch me," I replied, sealing another box with deliberate precision. The next morning, I loaded my belongings into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove away from Phoenix forever. In my rearview mirror, I watched my childhood home disappear, along with any illusions about family loyalty I might have harbored. Dr. Martinez had helped me secure emergency housing in Stanford's graduate dormitory system, despite being an incoming freshman. My academic record and unusual circumstances qualified me for special consideration. It wasn't luxurious, a tiny single room with concrete walls and a desk that doubled as a dining table, but it was mine. The first year was brutal. I worked 30 hours a week in the university's biochemistry lab while carrying a full course load. Sleep became a rare luxury, social life non-existent. Every dollar was carefully budgeted, every expense scrutinized. Ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches constituted most of my diet. But I persevered. My grades remained perfect, my research impressed professors, and slowly I began building a new support system among faculty and fellow students who appreciated dedication over family connections. Professor Sarah Chen, my organic chemistry instructor, became an unlikely mentor. She'd noticed me falling asleep in her 8 a.m. lecture after working late lab shifts and invited me to her office for coffee. "I see myself in you," she admitted during that first conversation. First-generation college student, family who didn't understand academic ambitions. It's a lonely path, but it leads to extraordinary places. Professor Chen introduced me to research opportunities, helped me apply for competitive scholarships, and provided the emotional support my biological family had withheld. She became the academic parent I'd needed, believing in my potential when I struggled to believe in myself. Through her connections, I secured a research position that paid better than my lab job, studying novel drug delivery systems for cancer treatment. The work was fascinating and meaningful, providing both financial stability and valuable experience for my future career. Meanwhile, from my family, I heard nothing. No calls checking on my well-being, no emails asking about my studies. The silence spoke volumes about their priorities. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I learned the truth about Marcus's fitness franchise. A classmate from Phoenix mentioned seeing news about a failed business venture that had left several investors bankrupt. When I researched online, I discovered Marcus's fitness concept had collapsed within 8 months, taking down not only my trust fund money, but additional investments from Dad's dealership profits. The bitter satisfaction I felt was tempered by genuine sadness. Not sadness for Marcus's failure, he'd earned that, but sadness for what our family might have been if they'd chosen differently. My academic journey continued with increasing success. Bachelor's degree with highest honors, acceptance to Stanford's biomedical engineering PhD program with full funding, research breakthroughs that earned publication in prestigious journals. Each achievement felt like both personal victory and vindication of Grandma's faith in my potential. During my doctoral studies, I specialized in developing targeted drug delivery systems for rare genetic disorders. The work was technically challenging and emotionally rewarding, offering hope to patients with previously untreatable conditions. My dissertation research caught the attention of pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers. Dr. Amanda Foster, my dissertation advisor, pushed me toward excellence while providing crucial career guidance. Under her mentorship, I published 12 peer-reviewed papers, presented at international conferences, and developed 2 patent applications for novel therapeutic approaches. "You have the potential to revolutionize personalized medicine," she told me during my final year. "The question is whether you want to pursue academic research or industrial application." The decision was complicated by competing offers. Harvard wanted to hire me as a postdoctoral researcher with a clear path to faculty position. MIT offered a similar track with additional research funding. But the offer that intrigued me most came from Biologic Solutions, a cutting-edge pharmaceutical company in San Diego developing personalized cancer treatments. Biologic's offer was extraordinary, a starting salary of $180,000, comprehensive benefits, stock options, and the opportunity to lead my own research team within 2 years. More importantly, they were committed to translating academic research into real-world treatments that could save lives. I accepted Biologic's offer, officially becoming Dr. David Chen. I legally changed my last name during college, adopting Professor Chen's surname with her blessing as a symbol of chosen family over biological obligation. The decision to host a PhD graduation celebration wasn't about showing off success. It was about acknowledging the journey, celebrating the community that had supported me, and marking the transition from student to professional researcher. The party was planned for my small apartment near campus, nothing fancy but sufficient for the 30 people who played meaningful roles in my academic journey. Professor Chen and her husband, Dr. Martinez from financial aid, classmates who'd become lifelong friends, and several faculty members who believed in my potential. I'd sent invitations to my biological family more from a sense of closure than expectation they'd attend. To my surprise, Dad RSVP'd for himself, Mom, and Marcus. No explanation, no attempt at reconciliation, just a brief email confirming their attendance. Professor Chen questioned the wisdom of including them. "Are you prepared for potential drama?" she asked gently. "Graduation should be about celebrating your achievements, not relitigating family conflicts." "I need to face them eventually," I replied. "Better to do it surrounded by people who actually support me." The party began beautifully. Friends and mentors shared stories about my academic journey. Professor Chen gave a touching speech about watching me grow from struggling freshman to accomplished researcher, and I felt genuinely grateful for the community I'd built. Then my biological family arrived. Dad looked older, grayer, with new lines around his eyes that suggested stress or regret. Mom maintained her real estate agent facade, all professional smiles and carefully styled appearance. But it was Marcus who commanded attention, or perhaps demanded it. He'd gained weight, his athletic build softened by years of failed ventures and disappointed expectations. His once confident demeanor had been replaced by something hungrier, more desperate. Jessica was notably absent, their relationship apparently another casualty of his business failures. "Look at this place," Marcus announced loudly, interrupting a conversation between my classmates. "Our little professor brother, living like a graduate student even after finishing his PhD. The room quieted uncomfortably. My friends weren't accustomed to family dynamics this toxic, especially at what should have been a celebration. "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "I'm glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," Dad interjected, though his eyes were scanning the apartment with obvious disappointment. "We wanted to see what all those years of education produced." Mom approached with her practiced real estate smile. "Congratulations, honey. We're so proud of your accomplishment." The casual use of honey after 9 years of silence felt like a slap. But I maintained my composure, introducing them to my academic community with polite distance. "This is my family," I explained to Professor Chen. "We haven't seen each other in several years." "How lovely that they came to celebrate your achievement," she replied graciously, though I caught the subtle warning in her eyes. For 30 minutes, they mingled awkwardly with my guests, clearly out of place among academics who valued intellectual achievement over financial success. I watched them carefully, wondering what had motivated this unexpected appearance. The answer came when I called for attention to make a brief speech thanking everyone for their support during my academic journey. "Before you continue," Marcus interrupted, stepping forward with renewed confidence, "I want to say something as your older brother." My stomach clenched, recognizing the manipulation tactics from childhood. But I was no longer a powerless teenager. "David's achievement is impressive," Marcus continued, "but it's time to think about family responsibilities. Now that he's got this fancy PhD and job offers, he needs to remember who supported him through the tough times." Murmurs of confusion rippled through my guests. They knew my story, how I'd been financially abandoned and forced to rebuild alone. "What I'm saying," Marcus pressed on, "is that David's new salary needs to go toward helping family. Specifically, I've got a new business opportunity, a consulting firm that specializes in helping other businesses recover from setbacks. But I need startup capital. The audacity was breathtaking. After 9 years of silence, he was using my graduation party as a platform to solicit funds for his latest venture. The pharmaceutical job pays really well, Dad added, clearly part of a coordinated effort. More than one person needs. Family should come first. Mom nodded approvingly. We've always believed in helping each other. Now that David is successful, it's time to give back to the family that raised him. The room was completely silent now, my academic community watching this surreal display of entitlement with horrified fascination. I smiled calmly, pulled out my phone, and connected it to my apartment's smart TV. Actually, I have something I'd like to share with everyone. The first document that appeared on screen was a bank statement from 9 years ago showing the systematic withdrawal of $200,000 from my educational trust fund. This is interesting, I began conversationally. My family seems to have forgotten that they stole my inheritance to fund Marcus's fitness franchise, a business that failed within 8 months, losing every penny. Dad's face went white. That was a loan, not theft. We always intended to pay it back. Really? I swiped to the next document. This is a sworn affidavit from the bankruptcy attorney who handled the fitness franchise dissolution. According to his records, there was never any plan to repay the trust fund money. It was listed as an initial capital investment with no expectation of return. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but I continued before he could speak. This next document is more interesting. A credit report appeared on screen. After I left home, someone opened multiple credit cards and business lines of credit in my name. The total fraudulent debt exceeded $75,000. The room gasped. Identity theft was serious, and my academic community understood the implications immediately. Fortunately, I continued, I was able to work with law enforcement to trace the fraud. The applications were filled out with Marcus's handwriting, using information only family members would know. The debt was used to fund his subsequent business ventures after the fitness franchise collapsed. That's impossible, Mom protested weakly. Marcus would never... Never what? I interrupted. Never commit fraud? Never steal from family? Because I have police reports, handwriting analysis, and financial records that say otherwise. Eric produced another document. This is my favorite. When I reported the identity theft, the detective discovered that Marcus had also forged Dad's signature on several business loan applications, using the auto dealerships as collateral without permission. Dad turned to stare at Marcus with dawning horror. You did what? It was temporary, Marcus said desperately. I was going to fix everything before you found out. Fix everything. I laughed bitterly. Like you fixed the fitness franchise? Like you fixed the restaurant? Like you fixed any business venture you've ever attempted? The room remained silent, except for Marcus's increasingly frantic explanations and justifications. My academic community watched with the fascination of scientists observing a particularly toxic specimen. Here's my favorite document, I said, swiping to a final page. This is a forensic accounting report I commissioned last year. It traces every penny of my stolen trust fund money and shows exactly how it was wasted. The report detailed a cascade of failed investments, luxury purchases, and poor decisions that had squandered not only my inheritance, but substantial additional funds from Dad's business. According to this analysis, I continued, the total family financial losses attributable to Marcus's ventures exceed $800,000 over 9 years. Money that could have funded my education, supported legitimate business growth, or been invested responsibly for family security. We were trying to build something, Dad said weakly. Create opportunities for the family. You were enabling a gambling addiction, I corrected. Marcus is addicted to the thrill of new ventures, the fantasy of easy success, and you funded that addiction by stealing from me. Mom found her voice. We made mistakes, but we're still family. Can't we move past this? Move past it? I set down my phone and looked directly at her. You haven't even acknowledged what you did wrong. You came here tonight to ask for money, not to apologize or make amends. Money you wouldn't have without the values we taught you, Marcus insisted desperately. Values? Professor Chen stepped forward, her academic composure replaced by protective fury. What values did you teach him? That family means exploitation? That trust funds exist to subsidize failed businesses? That identity theft is acceptable if it's committed by relatives? This is between family members, Dad said coldly. Outsiders shouldn't interfere. These outsiders are more family to me than you've ever been, I replied firmly. They supported my education, believed in my potential, and celebrated my achievements without expecting anything in return. I gestured around the room. Professor Chen mentored me when you abandoned me. Dr. Martinez helped me navigate financial aid when you stole my resources. My classmates became the siblings who actually cared about my success. We always cared, Mom protested. You cared about what I could provide, I corrected. My grades reflected well on your parenting. My achievements made good conversation at dinner parties. My trust fund offered convenient financing for Marcus's schemes. but you never cared about me as a person. The truth hung in the air, undeniable and devastating. Fine, Marcus said, his desperation giving way to anger. Keep your money, but don't come crawling back when you realize you need family. I already have family, I replied, looking around the room at my chosen community. I have people who love me without conditions, support me without expecting returns, and celebrate my achievements without calculating their cut. Dad made one final attempt. Blood is thicker than water, son. Actually, Professor Chen interjected with academic precision, the full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means chosen bonds are stronger than familial obligations. I smiled at her, grateful for both the linguistic correction and the emotional support. You should leave, I said quietly to my biological family. This party is for people who actually care about my success. They left with varying degrees of drama. Marcus storming out with threats and accusations, Mom departing with injured dignity, Dad lingering briefly as though wanting to say something meaningful before ultimately following in silence. After they left, my real family closed ranks around me. Friends shared outraged commentary about the confrontation. Professors offered support and validation, and the party gradually returned to its celebratory purpose. Are you okay? Professor Chen asked as the evening wound down. More than okay, I replied honestly. I needed that closure. I needed them to see who I became despite their sabotage, not because of their support. Dr. Martinez, who'd witnessed the entire confrontation, shook her head in amazement. I've seen family financial abuse before, but rarely that blatant. You've built an incredible life despite their attempts to destroy your opportunities. The weeks following graduation were filled with preparation for my new position at Biologic Solutions. The company flew me to San Diego for orientation, introduced me to my research team, and showed me the laboratory where I'd be developing next-generation cancer treatments. My starting salary was higher than my parents' combined income during my childhood. The stock options and benefits package provided security I'd never experienced. Most importantly, the work offered purpose, the chance to develop treatments that could save lives and reduce suffering. I purchased a small house in La Jolla, 20 minutes from the lab, with ocean views and space for a home office. After years of cramped dormitories and shared apartments, having my own space felt like luxury beyond imagination. The house wasn't large or ostentatious, but it was mine. Paid for with earnings from honest work, furnished with belongings chosen for personal preference rather than financial necessity. I planted a garden, set up a workshop for building electronic projects, and created the peaceful environment I dreamed of during those difficult early years. Professor Chen visited during my first month in San Diego, marveling at my transformation from struggling student to successful researcher. Your grandmother would be proud, she said as we walked along the beach near my house. You honored her investment in your education despite every obstacle your family created. 6 months into my new job, I received unexpected news. Dad had suffered a heart attack, requiring emergency surgery and extended recovery. Mom called, our first contact since graduation, to inform me and presumably solicit financial assistance. Your father's medical bills are substantial, she explained during our awkward phone conversation. The dealership insurance has limitations, and we're facing significant out-of-pocket expenses. I listened politely before responding. I'm sorry to hear about Dad's health problems. I hope he recovers fully. We could really use help with the medical costs, she pressed. Just a loan to cover the immediate expenses. Have you considered asking Marcus? I suggested. I'm sure his consulting business is doing well. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about Marcus's latest venture. We were hoping, Mom continued carefully, that you might be willing to help family during this difficult time. I am helping family, I replied. I'm donating $50,000 to establish a scholarship fund at Stanford for first-generation college students whose families won't support their education. The scholarship, administered by Dr. Martinez, would provide exactly the kind of support I needed during my darkest moments: emergency housing, meal plans, and mentorship to help students navigate academic success despite family dysfunction. That's very generous, Mom said stiffly, but we need immediate help. Then I suggest you contact your bank, your insurance company, or a medical social worker who can help arrange payment plans, I replied. Those are the appropriate resources for medical financial assistance. I ended the call politely but firmly, feeling no guilt about maintaining boundaries. My biological family had made their priorities clear years ago. Now I was making mine equally clear. The scholarship fund became one of my most meaningful projects outside of work. Working with Dr. Martinez and Professor Chen, we created a comprehensive support system for students facing family financial abandonment. The program provided not just money, but mentorship, career guidance, and emotional support from faculty and alumni who understood the unique challenges of building success despite family sabotage. Our first scholarship recipient was Maria Santos, a brilliant chemistry student whose family had disowned her for choosing college over marriage. Watching her thrive with proper support reminded me daily why boundary setting with toxic family members was essential rather than selfish. 2 years into my career at Biologic, our team achieved a major breakthrough in targeted cancer therapy. The treatment protocol I developed showed remarkable success in clinical trials, offering hope for patients with previously terminal diagnoses. The company's stock price doubled overnight, making my options package worth more than my parents had earned in their entire careers. More importantly, knowing that my research would save lives provided satisfaction no amount of money could match. The scared 19-year-old who'd driven away from Phoenix with nothing but determination had become a scientist whose work mattered on a global scale. The success also attracted media attention. Medical journals featured articles about our research breakthroughs, and I was invited to speak at international conferences about personalized cancer treatment. My professional achievements created a public record of success that even my biological family couldn't ignore. I wasn't surprised when Marcus reached out via LinkedIn, proposing a business lunch to discuss exciting opportunities for collaboration. I declined politely, blocking him on all social media platforms to prevent future contact attempts. Dad sent a letter, actual handwritten correspondence, acknowledging his mistakes and expressing pride in my achievements. The letter was thoughtful and seemed genuine, but it arrived along with a business proposal for franchising medical consulting services. Even his apology came with a sales pitch. I kept the letter, but didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt simply because one party decides they want to cross them again. Mom's approach was more subtle. She began sending cards for holidays and birthdays, always including news about family friends' medical problems and hints about how my pharmaceutical connections might help them access experimental treatments. Even her attempts at reconciliation focused on what I could provide rather than who I'd become. The consistency of their behavior validated my decision to maintain no contact. Despite clear evidence that their approach wasn't working, they continued treating me as a resource rather than recognizing me as a person with legitimate grievances and boundaries. My chosen family, meanwhile, continued growing and thriving. Professor Chen earned a major research grant and invited me to collaborate on projects bridging academic research and industrial application. Dr. Martinez expanded the scholarship program to other universities, creating a nationwide network of support for students facing family financial abandonment. My colleagues at Biologic became close friends as well as professional partners. We socialized outside work, supported each other through career challenges, and celebrated successes together. These relationships, built on mutual respect and shared values, provided the emotional security my biological family had never offered. During my 3rd year in San Diego, I met Dr. Lisa Park, a pediatric oncologist at the local children's hospital. She was brilliant, compassionate, and shared my commitment to using science to reduce suffering. Our relationship developed slowly, built on intellectual compatibility and emotional honesty. Lisa understood my family history without judgment, having experienced her own challenges with parents who couldn't accept her career choices. We bonded over stories of family dysfunction and celebration of chosen family support systems. When I proposed to her on the beach near my house, it felt like the completion of a journey that had begun years earlier in that Phoenix living room. I was no longer the powerless teenager whose inheritance had been stolen to fund his brother's fantasies. I was a successful scientist, surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally, building a life based on my own values rather than others' expectations. Our wedding was small but perfect. 50 guests who genuinely cared about our happiness, held in the Botanical Garden at UC San Diego, where we'd had our first official date. Professor Chen officiated, having become ordained online specifically for the occasion. Dr. Martinez gave a reading about the difference between biological family and chosen family that left many guests in tears. My biological family wasn't invited. The decision wasn't made from spite, but from self-preservation. I wanted my wedding day to celebrate love and commitment, not serve as another platform for manipulation and drama. Dad sent a card anyway, finding my address through public records, expressing disappointment about being excluded from his son's wedding. The card included photos of his recovery from heart surgery and hospital bills, a not-so-subtle reminder of ongoing medical expenses. I threw it away without reading the entire message. Lisa and I honeymooned in Japan, where I'd been invited to present our cancer research at an international medical conference. We combined business with pleasure, exploring Tokyo's technology districts and Kyoto's ancient temples, while discussing the intersection of traditional medicine and modern pharmaceutical innovation. During our trip, I received a call from an unexpected source, Jessica, Marcus's ex-girlfriend, whom I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. She was now working as a financial crimes investigator for the Arizona Attorney General's office and had information about my family that I needed to hear. "Your brother is under investigation for securities fraud," she informed me during our awkward international phone conversation. The consulting business he started is actually a Ponzi scheme targeting elderly investors. The irony was staggering. Marcus had convinced senior citizens to invest their retirement savings in his business recovery consulting firm, promising guaranteed returns through his expertise in helping failing companies. In reality, he was using new investor money to pay fake profits to earlier investors while siphoning funds for personal expenses. How much money are we talking about? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Over $3 million, Jessica replied grimly. 78 victims so far, most of them retirees who lost their life savings. The conversation continued with details about the investigation, the evidence against Marcus, and the likelihood of federal charges being filed. Jessica explained that my family's financial history, including the trust fund theft and subsequent business failures, had become relevant to establishing a pattern of financial misconduct. There's something else, she added hesitantly. Your parents are listed as business partners in the consulting firm. They may face charges as co-conspirators. That revelation hit harder than Marcus's crimes. While I'd expected him to eventually escalate his fraudulent behavior, I hadn't anticipated Mom and Dad becoming active participants in victimizing innocent people. Are they aware of the investigation? I asked. Not yet. We're still gathering evidence before making arrests. I called you as a courtesy. You have a right to know what's coming. I thanked Jessica for the warning and ended the call, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. My family's financial crimes had finally caught up with them, but the cost would be devastating for dozens of elderly victims who trusted them with their life savings. Lisa found me sitting on our hotel balcony, staring out at the Tokyo skyline while processing the implications of Jessica's call. Bad news from home? She asked gently, settling into the chair beside me. I explained the situation, watching her expression shift from surprise to disappointment to anger on behalf of the fraud victims. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know you've distanced yourself from them, but learning about something like this must still be painful. What bothers me most, I admitted, is that I'm not surprised. This feels like the inevitable conclusion of years of smaller frauds and failed schemes. Will you be involved in the investigation? She asked. Only if they subpoena me as a witness, I replied. Jessica said they have plenty of evidence without my testimony, but prosecutors might want me to establish the pattern of prior financial misconduct. The rest of our honeymoon was overshadowed by this news, though we tried to focus on our new marriage and the exciting research developments we were discussing with Japanese colleagues. The conference presentation went well, generating interest from several international pharmaceutical companies wanting to license our cancer treatment protocols. We returned to San Diego to find media coverage of Marcus's arrest. The story had made national news due to the scale of the fraud and the vulnerable population he targeted. Photos of Marcus in handcuffs outside the Phoenix courthouse were splashed across financial crime websites and elder abuse advocacy pages. Mom and Dad were arrested 3 days later, charged as co-conspirators in the investment fraud scheme. The local news coverage showed them being led away from their Scottsdale home in handcuffs, looking older and more fragile than I remembered from my graduation party confrontation. The media attention intensified when journalists discovered my success story, the family member who'd escaped their fraudulent schemes to become a successful pharmaceutical researcher. Several reporters contacted me seeking comments about my family's crimes and my own journey from victim to success. I declined all interview requests, wanting to maintain privacy while the legal proceedings unfolded. My story wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about the importance of boundaries and the possibility of building success despite family sabotage. Biologic's legal department advised me to avoid any public statements that might compromise the criminal investigation or create complications for the company. They were supportive of my situation, but understandably wanted to protect the organization from negative publicity. The trial proceedings stretched over 18 months, during which time I focused on my research and my marriage while following developments through Jessica's periodic updates. The evidence against my family was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded phone calls with victims, and testimony from investigators who traced the money flows. Marcus eventually pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges in exchange for a lighter sentence and cooperation with prosecutors. His testimony implicated Mom and Dad as knowing participants who'd helped recruit victims and manage fraudulent financial records. During his sentencing hearing, Marcus finally showed genuine remorse, not for me or our family dysfunction, but for the elderly victims whose retirements he destroyed. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, noting the premeditated nature of his crimes and the vulnerable population he targeted. Mom and Dad received shorter sentences after their attorney negotiated plea agreements. Dad was sentenced to 6 years, Mom to 4 years, both in minimum security federal facilities. Their ages and health issues, along with cooperation with authorities, earned them more lenient treatment than Marcus received. I attended none of the court proceedings, learning about outcomes through news reports and Jessica's summaries. The chapter of my life involving my biological family was closed. I saw no benefit in reopening it, even to witness their accountability for decades of financial misconduct. The stolen trust fund money was never recovered. It had been lost in Marcus's legitimate business failures years before his securities fraud scheme began. However, the court ordered restitution to the Ponzi scheme victims from any remaining family assets, including forced sale of their home and liquidation of Dad's remaining dealership interests. During this period, my professional life continued flourishing. Our cancer research earned additional patents and licensing agreements worth millions to Biologic. I was promoted to senior research director with expanded laboratory space and a larger team of scientists working on related projects. More importantly, our treatments began saving lives. The first patients to receive our targeted therapy showed remarkable responses, with several achieving complete remission from previously terminal cancers. Medical journals published our updated results, and oncologists worldwide began requesting access to our protocols. Lisa and I bought a larger house in Del Mar, closer to her hospital and with space for the family we were planning. The house had an ocean view, a home laboratory for my personal projects, and a garden where we could grow vegetables and flowers together. We also established a nonprofit foundation focusing on financial literacy education for young adults. The foundation provided workshops on protecting personal finances, recognizing fraud schemes, and building healthy boundaries with family members who might exploit financial resources. The foundation's work attracted attention from universities, social service agencies, and legal advocacy groups. We partnered with organizations helping first-generation college students, young adults aging out of foster care, and others vulnerable to family financial exploitation. One of our most successful programs involved training college financial aid counselors to recognize signs of family financial abuse and provide appropriate resources to affected students. Dr. Martinez became a key partner in developing these protocols, sharing her experience with students like me who'd faced educational funding sabotage. 3 years after my family's criminal convictions, I received a letter from Dad in federal prison. Unlike his previous correspondence, this letter contained no business proposals or requests for assistance. Instead, it was a genuine apology acknowledging the harm his choices had caused me and expressing regret for enabling Marcus's destructive behavior. "I failed you as a father," he wrote in careful handwriting. "I chose Marcus's immediate needs over your long-term welfare, and I allowed financial pressure to cloud my judgment about right and wrong. You succeeded despite my failures, not because of any support I provided." The letter continued with details about his prison experience, including financial literacy classes he was taking and volunteer work with elderly inmates who've been victims of fraud similar to what he'd helped perpetrate. "I understand if you never want to see me again," the letter concluded, "but I want you to know that I'm proud of the man you became and the lives your research is saving. Your grandmother would be proud too." I read the letter several times before sharing it with Lisa and my therapist, Dr. Rebecca Torres, whom I'd started seeing to process the complex emotions surrounding my family's criminal convictions. "How does it make you feel?" Dr. Torres asked during our session. "Sad," I replied honestly. Not sad enough to rebuild a relationship, but sad that it took federal prison for him to acknowledge what he'd done wrong. "Do you feel any obligation to respond?" she asked. "No," I answered without hesitation. An apology doesn't erase decades of harm or create an obligation for forgiveness. I didn't respond to Dad's letter, but I kept it. Perhaps someday I'd want to remember that he was capable of genuine remorse, even if it came too late to repair our relationship. Marcus never wrote. According to Jessica, who occasionally updated me on family developments, he'd found religion in prison and claimed to be a changed man. However, his attempts to contact potential victims for restorative justice conversations suggested he hadn't entirely abandoned his manipulative tendencies. Mom sent cards sporadically, birthday and holiday greetings with brief notes about prison life and expressions of love. I read them but didn't respond, maintaining the boundaries that had served me well for over a decade. As my 5th wedding anniversary approached, I reflected on the journey from Phoenix to La Jolla, from stolen trust fund to successful career, from family betrayal to chosen family support. The contrast was striking. I'd gone from sleeping in my car as a teenager to owning multiple homes as an adult, from having my identity stolen to building an international reputation, from being exploited by family to helping others avoid similar exploitation. The scared 19-year-old who'd driven away from Phoenix with nothing but determination had become a respected scientist, loving husband, and advocate for others facing family financial abuse. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been easy, but it proved that family dysfunction doesn't have to define your future. Lisa and I decided to renew our wedding vows on our 5th anniversary, celebrating not just our marriage, but the community of chosen family that had supported us both. The ceremony was held in our garden, with Professor Chen officiating again, and many of the same friends who'd attended our original wedding. During the renewal ceremony, I spoke about the difference between obligation and love, between biological connection and emotional bond, between family that exploits and family that supports. The words weren't directed at my biological family. They were irrelevant to my current life, but at young people who might be struggling with similar dysfunction. Family isn't just about shared DNA, I said to our gathered friends. Family is about people who celebrate your successes without calculating their benefit, who support your dreams without expecting returns, and who love you for who you are rather than what you can provide. Professor Chen added her own thoughts about academic family, mentors and students connected by shared intellectual passion rather than biological accident. Dr. Martinez spoke about the importance of supporting young people whose families fail them, and Lisa discussed the families created in hospital settings where caregivers and patients bond over shared struggles and hopes. The celebration was perfect in its simplicity and authenticity. No drama, no hidden agendas, no one calculating what they might gain from our happiness. Just genuine love and support from people who'd chosen to be part of our lives. That evening, as we cleaned up after the celebration, I found myself thinking about the path that had led me here. Every betrayal had taught me valuable lessons about boundaries and self-worth. Every setback had strengthened my determination and resilience. Every small victory had built confidence for larger challenges. I thought about Grandma Rose, the mathematics professor who'd believed in my potential enough to establish an educational trust fund. Her money had been stolen, but her faith in my abilities had proven prophetic. I was living the life she'd envisioned for me, intellectually fulfilling, financially secure, and dedicated to making the world better through scientific research. I thought about Professor Chen, who'd seen potential in a struggling freshman and provided mentorship that changed my trajectory. Her guidance had been freely given, without expectation of return, modeling what healthy family relationships should look like. I thought about Dr. Martinez, who'd helped me navigate financial aid when my family abandoned me, and who now worked with our foundation to help other students facing similar challenges. Her support had extended far beyond her job requirements, demonstrating institutional family at its best. I thought about Lisa, who'd chosen to build a life with me based on shared values and mutual respect rather than obligation or convenience. Our marriage represented the family I'd chosen for myself, supportive, honest, and committed to each other's growth and happiness. Most importantly, I thought about the cancer patients whose lives our research had saved. Their recovery letters filled a file in my home office, each one a reminder that my escape from family dysfunction had enabled me to contribute something meaningful to the world. The scared teenager who'd packed his belongings into a Honda Civic couldn't have imagined this outcome. The young man who'd slept in his car to avoid returning home couldn't have envisioned the security and success that would eventually follow. But the journey had required every difficult step. The financial struggles that forced me to develop discipline and persistence. The family betrayal that taught me to recognize healthy versus toxic relationships. The years of isolation that helped me appreciate genuine connection when I found it. As I finished putting away chairs in our garden, surrounded by the home Lisa and I had built together, I felt profound gratitude for the path that had led me here. Not gratitude for my family's dysfunction, that would be Stockholm Syndrome, but gratitude for my own resilience and the community that had supported my recovery. The next morning, I returned to my laboratory at Biologic, where my research team was preparing for clinical trials of our latest cancer treatment protocol. The work was challenging and meaningful, offering hope to patients with limited options while advancing our understanding of personalized medicine. My phone buzzed with a text from one of our foundation scholarship recipients, Maria Santos, the chemistry student we'd supported through her undergraduate studies. She'd just been accepted to graduate school with full funding and wanted to thank us for believing in her potential when her own family had abandoned her. Reading her message, I smiled at the circle of support we'd created. The money stolen from my trust fund had ultimately funded Marcus's failed schemes and fraudulent activities. But the success I'd built despite that theft was now supporting other young people facing similar family betrayal. That seemed like the best possible outcome, transforming family dysfunction into community support, turning personal pain into systemic change, and using my platform to help others avoid or overcome the challenges I'd faced. The scared 19-year-old in the Honda Civic had become a man who could protect and nurture others facing similar struggles. That transformation felt like victory in the most meaningful sense. Not revenge against those who'd wronged me, but positive impact that extended far beyond my personal circumstances. As I settled into my laboratory for another day of cancer research, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. The family that had tried to steal my future had ended up in federal prison, while I built a career saving lives and supporting educational opportunity for others. The contrast was stark, but it wasn't about punishment or karma. It was about choices, their choice to exploit and manipulate versus my choice to build boundaries and seek authentic relationships. Their choice to prioritize immediate gratification over long-term consequences versus my choice to work steadily toward meaningful goals. Everyone faces family dysfunction to some degree. Not everyone faces fraud and abandonment as extreme as what I'd experienced, but many people struggle with family members who prioritize their own needs over healthy relationships. The key lesson from my journey wasn't that biological family should be abandoned at the first sign of trouble. The lesson was that family relationships, like all relationships, should be based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and exploitation. When family members consistently demonstrate that they view you as a resource rather than a person, when they respond to your success by calculating what they can gain rather than celebrating your achievements, when they create crises to manipulate your emotions and extract your resources, those aren't healthy family dynamics worth preserving. Boundaries aren't cruel. Protecting yourself from exploitation isn't selfish. Building a life based on your own values rather than others' expectations isn't betrayal. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to define family as people who actually love and support you rather than people who happen to share your DNA. My story ended not with reconciliation or forgiveness, though I wish my biological family well and hope they learned from their consequences, but with the peace that comes from building authentic relationships based on mutual respect and shared values. The trust fund that had been stolen to finance Marcus's schemes couldn't be recovered, but the trust I'd built with my chosen family was worth more than any inheritance my grandmother could have provided. And that trust, unlike money, could never be stolen or squandered by anyone other than myself.